Hi, welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about the mother wound in men. Now this is a pretty unspoken topic, but something which is really impacting how men show up in the world, not least in their relationships. Now let's dive in. I first want to cover the types of mother wound that a child can have. All right, and if you don't know what the mother wound is basically the psychological impact we are left with as adults from our relationship we had with our mothers as children. Now, the first is when a child, a son in this case, has an overbearing mother, all right, where she impinges on his autonomy, on his privacy. Perhaps she's meddling with things in his life, in his school life, perhaps, and it's actually really embarrassing for him. This is going to lead that child to wanting to distance himself from women, the influence of women growing up. This can look like an avoidant attachment wound in relationships. The next is when a child has a narcissistic mother. Now, I want to clarify here, there are two types of narcissistic parents. You can get the kind of overt, grandiose narcissist, and then there's a more covert narcissist, which kind of manifests as excessive victim mentality, wanting all the attention and sympathy on them. In both cases, it's always, I need the attention, okay? I'm the most important person in the room. Now we can just guess the kind of impact this has on a child. But essentially that is a neglect of the child's emotional needs. It's dismissive of any needs that child has, and the attention isn't there. In worst cases, and this brings me on to the next point, is that child will then have to parent his mother, okay? And this is more the case with the covert narcissist. And that boy has to take on an adult parenting role, okay? He has to suppress his emotional needs, wants, etc., and prioritize the emotional needs of his mother just so he can feel safe and secure and that his needs might get met. This leads him to becoming very self-reliant, very mature early on, and I'll put my hand up. This was very much the case for me. Anyway, moving on, the next kind of mother wound that could be impacting you is that you were excessively punished, abandoned, or shamed, particularly when you expressed your emotions or you made requests, and this will lead to self-betrayal and codependency in relationships in your adult life. Okay, you learned as a kid that your needs weren't important, so you suppressed them, all right, and you do that in relationships, or you kind of got the belief that, hey, it's not safe for me to bring forward my needs. He's brought up being afraid of ever rocking the boat, of ever upsetting his mum, all right, because when that happened, when his mother was criticizing him, angry with him, etc., he built the belief that she's rejecting him because he is not worthy, okay? And if he continues to act out of line, his lifeline, i.e. the connection with his mother, getting his needs met, will be jeopardized. It is at risk. So this leads him to acquiescing, always acting in accordance with what his mother wants, so he can get that confirmation, that validation, etc. And fast forward to today, he projects that onto women. You know, constantly trying to make sure that she's happy in the relationship, meeting her needs, suppressing his own, over-indexing, codependency, all this kind of stuff. Okay, with men, how does this show up? Well, for me, there are three particular ways that the mother wound shows up with men. Okay, the first is that he is immensely disrespectful of women. He is misogynistic, whether that's kind of a conscious decision or subconscious. And of course, there can be some kind of cultural conditioning there, depending on his influences. But when he has this wound, when the mother has pained him in some way, or there is that antagonism with, you know, dominant female figures in his life, he'll project that outwards and basically consciously or subconsciously label all women as less than. So another way that mother wound shows up is a man feeling very insecure around women, okay, being shy to ask them out, to voice his true opinion. He is pedestaling them, okay? He kind of gives them a position of power, thinking himself more lowly. And the last way that the mother wound shows up in men is emotional enmeshment. This is codependency in relationship, where a man is constantly giving up his needs, wants, boundaries, just so he can appease, placate the relationship, his woman. This leads to self-betrayal, self-sacrifice, and a lot of resentment. And where that is originating from is when his mother was either punishing him, shaming him, or abandoning him when he was bringing forth his emotional needs, making requests, etc. And that basically gives him the conditioning that if he kind of steps out of line or does something which his mum doesn't want, upsets her, then he loses that lifeline, okay, the connection to his mother. So he gets this conditioning. It is better, safer for him to acquiesce, just act in line, or he'll have to risk not getting his needs met or the pain of being shamed, punished, etc. Now, fast forward to today in the adult world, he projects that relationship onto his partners. Okay, so again, that looks like staying small, suppressing his emotions, over-indexing, trying to meet his partner's needs at the cost of all of his wants, needs, boundaries. And at the very worst, he will try and get his needs met through conceit or covert contracts. All right, a covert contract is when the man kind of makes his contract with a woman, but it's completely unsaid, i.e., hey, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, maybe like wash the dishes, do all the housework during the week, and at the weekend, you're going to sleep with me. There's a very crude example of a covert contract, but I hope you get the idea. And I do want to highlight that the mother wound can be more pronounced with men who have been brought up in a single parent household with his mother, okay? Because his mom is going to end up having to take both the kind of nurturing, more feminine role and this more disciplinary, masculine role. And as a young child, you're getting conditioned that you want that nurturing, you need that nurturing, okay? But your mom's also playing the disciplinary role, and you realize like, if I step out of line, she disciplines me, she withdraws that nurturing care, that more loving feminine side of her. And that's really painful. And you don't want to lose that because as a child, that's really vital. All right. So again, this becomes more pronounced, this acquiescing to the mother's need when it is just her. You're relying on her because she is ultimately showing two faces. Okay. In a dual parent household, you may be traditionally is, getting that more discipline from your father. And it's like, okay, I don't want to piss him off, but mum's always a safe haven. Okay, single parent household, it isn't quite like that. And the mother's role in it is that she will be kind of reinforcing where he is doing good. Maybe she's giving him excessive praise, rewarding him, etc. So again, this is just playing into that conditioning. All right. The boy thinks, hey, if I play by the rule book, I get more of that nurturing affection. Now, fast forward to adult relationships. That man is then constantly looking to where he can get feminine nurturing, attention, approval, validation, okay? Because he realized, he's learned that, hey, it's better to play by the rule book and I can get that. And a lot of this is happening subconsciously, all right? There's part of his brain which is always kind of fixated on, okay, how do I please women? How do I meet their needs, okay? And there's no kind of reflection on what is important to him, what he needs. And this happens both in dating phases and in long-term relationships. And I want to say another thing on a man who has had an emotionally intrusive mother, okay? One where there's kind of this encroachment, this overbearing, maybe high expectations. What's going to happen is in adult relationships, he's going to be afraid of that engulfment, of losing his autonomy, of losing his sense of self. And this can happen in quite subtle ways, but something I've noticed in my own experience in my 7-year relationship at the beginning, there was an aversion to receiving my girlfriend's advice, okay? And I kind of unpacked that because at the end of the day, it was actually detrimental to me. She was kind of helping me, trying to help me in a lot of ways, and was valid, good, useful advice that I was rejecting. But I was rejecting it based on this aversion to having a strong influence. I was basically projecting my mother onto her because my mother was overbearing, as well as being a kind of covert narcissist, all this stuff. I was afraid of that engulfment. Okay, and this played into my avoidant attachment wound. And I've since learned to, recognize that when that trigger comes up and be more open and receiving to her advice. And another thing on that, if you have this kind of misogynistic outlook on life and you see women as lowly, there can be this masculine pride and aversion to taking advice from a woman. And that is pretty toxic, and you don't want to do that. Mature men take responsibility for their own lives, and they take responsibility for either taking or ignoring advice. All right. He recognizes the power is always on him. It's never that, just because I took advice from this other person, that makes me less powerful. It's like, no, you can be mature and conscious and empowered by seeing what is good advice and what is, worthwhile in your best interest to take, and what's to ignore. If unconsciously you're just a kind of stubborn teenage brat saying, no, I'm not going to take anyone's advice, I'm the boss. This is hubris, this is arrogance, this is that kind of hero shadow archetype. All right, that's a wrap. This video is exploring the mother wound in men. Let me know in the comments below how this is shown up for you. And if you're new to the channel, please click subscribe, like the video. That helps the algorithm, the score.